was standing in front of a $265 million mansion when my ex-boss called to fire me for being 5 minutes late. 5 minutes. Let me back up, because this is the kind of story you're not going to believe until I walk you through every insane detail. 2 weeks ago, I was scrubbing toilets at Clean Corp for $9.50 an hour. My boss, Mr. Dale, this sadistic little man with a comb-over and a power complex, he loved making examples out of people. And that morning, I was his favorite target. I'd run through 3 red lights trying to get to the warehouse on time because my son Marcus had an asthma attack at 4 a.m., and I had to wait for his inhaler to kick in before I could leave him with my neighbor. I clocked in at 5:05 a.m., 5 minutes. Dale was waiting at the time clock like a predator. Arms crossed, that sick smile spreading across his face. Well, Maya thinks the rules don't apply to her. He said it loud enough for everyone to hear, loud enough for the other cleaners to stop and stare. My face burned. Mr. Dale, I'm so sorry. My son was... He cut me off. I don't care if your house was on fire. You're docked for the full day. Go home. Maybe next time you'll respect my time. I stood there, shaking, watching him walk away. 9 hours of pay. Gone. That was groceries. That was the late fee on my electric bill I'd been dodging for 2 weeks. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something at his smug back, but I just turned around and walked out. Because that's what you do when you're poor and powerless, right? You take it. You swallow the humiliation, the rage, the injustice, and you keep moving. Because if you don't, you lose everything. I drove home in my dying Toyota with the check engine light that had been on for 8 months, and when I pulled into my apartment complex, there it was, a bright orange eviction notice taped to my door. Final notice, pay $1,450 by Friday or vacate premises. It was Tuesday. I had $67 in my checking account. I sat down right there on the concrete steps and I couldn't even cry anymore. I was too tired. Too defeated. I'd hit the bottom, and the bottom had a basement. That's when I saw it. Tucked behind the eviction notice was a cream-colored envelope, expensive paper, the kind you don't see in my neighborhood. Ms. Maya Johnson, written in elegant script. I opened it with shaking hands, and the words didn't make sense at first. We regret to inform you of the passing of Mrs. Lorraine Hayes. Estate settlement. Your presence required. Brentwood, Tennessee. My grandmother, Lorraine. I hadn't seen her in 15 years, not since I was a teenager and she moved away to work for some rich family. I always thought she was just poor, like the rest of us. A housekeeper living in a room somewhere, sending birthday cards with $20 bills inside. The letter said I needed to come sign papers about her estate. I almost laughed. What estate? I figured maybe she had some old furniture, maybe a savings account with a few $100 in it. But Marcus needed his inhaler refilled and I had nothing else. So I scraped together enough gas money and we drove 6 hours to this address in Tennessee. GPS took us down this long, tree-lined driveway, and I thought we'd made a wrong turn. Because at the end of that driveway wasn't a house, it was a mansion. No, scratch that. It was a palace. 23,000 square feet of abandoned Southern Gothic architecture, with columns like something out of Gone with the Wind, balconies wrapped in ivy, a fountain in the circular driveway that hadn't run in years. I checked the address 3 times. This couldn't be right. But there was the lawyer, Mr. Patterson, standing on the front steps with a folder under his arm and a strange smile on his face. Ms. Johnson, welcome to Lionheart Estate. It's yours. I must have looked like an idiot, because I just stood there with my mouth open, Marcus gripping my hand, both of us in our Walmart clothes staring at this impossible thing. Mine, my voice cracked. There's been a mistake. My grandmother was a housekeeper. She was, Patterson said, walking us inside. For Kenny Rogers, the Kenny Rogers. for 32 years. When he died, he left everything to her. Not to his children, who were fighting over his money before his body was cold. To Lorraine, the only person who was loyal to him when he had nothing left but memories and morphine. He led us through rooms that belonged in a museum, grand pianos, oil paintings, chandeliers the size of my entire apartment. And then, the library. Floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves, first edition books, a rolling ladder like in Beauty and the Beast. Patterson walked straight to a section of wall that looked like all the others and pressed something. The bookshelf swung open. A hidden room, a safe the size of a refrigerator sat in the middle, door already open. And inside, gold bars, stacks of them, jewelry boxes overflowing with diamonds, and a leather portfolio filled with stock certificates, yellowed with age, from companies I recognized: Apple, Microsoft, Coca-Cola. Stocks Kenny had bought in the odd 80s and forgot about. Stocks that had split and multiplied and compounded for 40 years. Patterson handed me the portfolio. Current estimated value, conservatively, $265 million. It's all yours. Your grandmother wanted you to have the life she never could give you. I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. Marcus was touching a gold bar like it might disappear, and I was holding this portfolio, and my phone started ringing. I looked at the screen. Mr. Dale. I answered. Maya! His voice was a shriek through the speaker. Where the hell are you? Janine called in sick and we're short-staffed, and if you're not here in 10 minutes, you're fired. Do you hear me? Fired. I looked at the gold bar in my son's hands. I looked at the mansion around me, at the stocks worth more than Dale would make in 50 lifetimes. And for the first time in 15 years, I smiled. Really smiled. Dale, I said, my voice steady and cold. Keep the position. Actually, Cotty, you know what? I'm coming back. Not to clean. To buy the building. I hung up. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about money. This was about justice. And Mr. Dale had no idea what was coming for him. The first night in that mansion, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the luxury, though God, the bed was like sleeping on a cloud made of money, but because I kept thinking about Grandma Lorraine. I'd spent my whole life believing she was just invisible, you know? Another black woman cleaning up after rich white folks, sending me $20 birthday cards with little notes that said, "Stay strong, baby girl." I thought she was broke. I thought she was forgotten. I had no idea she was sitting on a fortune that would make most CEOs weep, and she never said a word. Not one word. Patterson explained it to me over coffee the next morning. And yeah, there was a literal coffee bar in the kitchen with one of those machines that costs more than a car. Kenny Rogers, in his final years, had been abandoned by almost everyone. His kids were vultures, circling, waiting for him to die so they could rip apart his estate. His ex-wives had already taken their cuts. His managers, his bandmates, his Hollywood friends, gone. But Lorraine? She stayed. She cooked his meals when his hands shook too much to hold a fork. She read him his fan mail when his eyes went bad. She sat with him in the music room while he played piano, even when he forgot the words to his own songs. And Kenny noticed. He noticed loyalty. So he made a secret will, one his lawyers hid so well that his greedy kids never found it. Everything. The mansion, the cars, the royalties, the stocks, the gold, went to Lorraine. To the only one who loved me when I had nothing left to give, the will said. She died 6 months after him, and she left it all to me. Marcus and I spent that first week exploring the place like it was Disneyland. There was a garage, no, a showroom, with 8 vintage cars under dusty covers. A 1977 Cadillac Eldorado in mint condition, a cherry red Corvette Stingray, a Rolls-Royce that still smelled like leather and old money. Upstairs, in what must have been Kenny's personal quarters, there were costumes from his shows, rhinestone jackets, cowboy hats, boots with actual silver spurs. Gold records lined the hallway. Platinum plaques for albums I'd heard on the radio my entire life, without knowing the man who made them had any connection to my family. Marcus found a room full of guitars, and he just stood there, staring, like he'd walked into a holy place. My son, who I could barely afford to buy a $30 keyboard for his birthday, was standing in a room with instruments worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I watched him carefully pick up an acoustic guitar, and I started crying. Not sad crying, angry crying. Because how many years did we suffer? How many nights did I skip meals so he could eat? How many times did I let landlords talk to me like I was trash? Let bosses humiliate me? Let the world make me feel small? When this was waiting for me the whole time. But there was a problem. Of course there was a problem. Patterson sat me down in the library, our library now, and slid a folder across the table. "Property taxes," he said. "The estate's been in legal limbo for 6 months during probate. Taxes are due $50,000. If you don't pay within 30 days, the state can seize the property." $50,000. It might as well have been 50 million. I had gold bars and stocks and vintage cars, sure, but no liquidity, no cash. And I couldn't just walk into a bank with a gold bar and say, "Can I get change for this?" Patterson explained the options. I could take out a loan against the estate, which would take weeks to process. I could start selling off pieces at auction, which would take months and attract attention. Or I could move fast, quiet, under the radar. You need to liquidate something small, something valuable, something that won't raise red flags, he said, and you need to do it now. I went back to that hidden room, back to the safe, and I started looking, really looking. There were jewelry boxes filled with rings and necklaces that probably belonged to Kenny's wives or girlfriends. There were rare coins, military medals, signed baseballs from players I didn't recognize. And then I saw it. A watch. A Rolex, heavy in gold, sitting in a velvet case with a little inscription on the back. "To Kenny, keep on cruisin'. Paul Newman." I held that watch in my hands, and I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was power. Real power. The kind of power that people like Mr. Dale never thought someone like me could touch. I tucked the watch into my purse, kissed Marcus on the forehead, and told him I'd be back soon. He asked where I was going. I smiled. To make sure we never have to leave. As I drove into the city, my hands were shaking on the wheel, but not from fear. From anticipation. Because I was about to step into a world that had always been closed to people like me. And I wasn't asking for permission anymore. I was taking what was mine. The pawn shop was in a part of Nashville I'd never been to. The kind of neighborhood where the buildings have valet parking and the people walking by are wearing shoes that cost more than my rent. I felt like an imposter walking through those glass doors with my Target jeans and my knockoff purse. But I had the watch, and that watch was my ticket out. The place was all marble floors and display cases with lighting that made everything look like art. A man behind the counter, mid-50s, gray suit, looked up at me with that expression I knew too well. The one that said, "You're in the wrong place, sweetheart." I walked straight to him anyway. "I need to sell this." I put the Rolex on the counter. He didn't even pick it up, just glanced at it, then back at me. "Oh, we don't buy fakes," he said flatly. My stomach dropped. "It's not fake. It belonged to—" "Lady, I've seen 1,000 knockoffs. This one's decent. I'll give you that. Best I can do is $200. $200. For a watch that belonged to Kenny Rogers. For a watch inscribed by Paul Newman." I felt that old familiar rage rising in my chest. The same rage I'd swallowed 1,000 times before. But this time I had proof. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the photos Patterson had given me, documentation, provenance, the whole estate inventory. "This watch is authenticated. It's in the registry. It's worth—" The man cut me off with a condescending smile. Look, I'm sure you found this at a garage sale or something, and you think you've got a treasure. But authentication can be faked. I'll give you $2,000. Final offer. Take it or leave it. $2,000. Still insulting. Still robbery. I was about to grab the watch and walk out when I heard a voice from across the shop. Stop. An older man, maybe 70, with white hair and a thick southern accent, was walking toward us fast. He'd been looking at something in a display case, but now his eyes were locked on the Rolex. May I? He asked me, not the shop owner. I nodded. He picked up the watch with hands that actually trembled, turned it over, read the inscription, and I watched his face go pale. Do you know what this is? He whispered. This is the Daytona, Paul Newman, that Paul Newman himself gave to Kenny Rogers in 1982 after they did that charity poker game together. I was there. I saw him hand it over. This watch has been missing from the estate for years. Everyone thought one of Kenny's kids sold it off. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his eyes were wide. Who are you? I'm Lorraine Hayes' granddaughter, I said quietly. The estate is mine now. The shop owner's face went from smug to panicked in about 2 seconds. The old man, turns out his name was Charles, and he'd been one of Kenny's tour managers back in the day, he started laughing. Not at me. At the situation. Son, he said to the shop owner, you just tried to scam this woman out of about $2 million. The room went silent. Charles pulled out his phone, made a call, and within 20 minutes, I had 3 collectors in that shop making offers. It was like watching a bidding war in a movie. 1.8 million. 2 million. 2.2, and I'll wire it today. I stood there, numb, while these men in expensive suits fought over my grandmother's watch. Charles ended up buying it himself for $2 million flat, wired directly to an account Patterson had set up for me. Before I left, he shook my hand and said, Your grandmother was a hell of a woman. She never touched Kenny's things, never tried to profit off him. She was loyal to the end. You honor her by using this wisely. I walked out of that shop with $2 million in my bank account. $2 million. I sat in my car in that fancy parking lot, and I just stared at my phone, at the bank notification, at the numbers that didn't feel real. The first thing I did, I paid off the property taxes. All $50,000, gone in one click. The mansion was safe. The second thing, I transferred Marcus to Brentwood Academy, the best private school in Tennessee. The one with the pristine campus and the teachers who actually gave a damn and the kids who didn't have to worry about whether there'd be heat in the winter. His first day was in 3 weeks. The third thing? I sat in that car, and I thought about Mr. Dale. I thought about every morning I'd woken up at 4 a.m., every time he'd humiliated me, every paycheck he'd shorted, every hour he'd stolen. And I realized something that made my hands shake. I didn't just want to forget him. I didn't just want to move on and live my new life. I wanted him to pay, not just fired, not just inconvenienced. I wanted him to feel exactly what I'd felt, small, powerless, crushed. So I made a call to Patterson. I need you to find out if Clean Corp is for sale, I said. And if it's not, make them an offer they can't refuse. Patterson called me back within 48 hours. A Clean Corp is drowning, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. The owner, Richard Brennan, he's been trying to offload it for 6 months. OSHA violations, lawsuits from former employees, terrible reputation. He's desperate. Music to my ears. What's he asking? I said. 1.2 million, but he'd probably take $800K just to get out from under it. I had $2 million sitting in my account. This was pocket change. But I didn't want Richard Brennan to know who was buying. I didn't want Dale to know. Not yet. Set up an LLC, I told Patterson. Call it Rogers Trust Holdings. Make the offer anonymous. And make it fast. 3 days later, it was done. I owned Clean Corp. Every toxic break room, every broken mop bucket, every time clock that had stolen hours from people like me. It was all mine now. Patterson sent me the employee files, and oh my God, it was worse than I thought. Dale had been skimming overtime for years, marking people as part-time to avoid benefits even though they worked 40-hour weeks. He'd been pocketing the difference on supply orders, buying cheap chemicals and charging the company for premium ones. He was a thief, a bully and a thief, and now he worked for me. I scheduled a new owner site visit for the following Monday, 5 a.m. sharp, the time Dale always made us clock in. I wanted him awake. I wanted him stressed. I wanted him exactly where I'd been 2 weeks ago. The days leading up to it were the longest of my life. I went shopping, not at Target this time. I went to the boutiques in downtown Nashville, the ones with the little bells on the doors and the assistants who bring you champagne while you try things on. I found a Chanel suit, vintage, black with gold buttons, the kind of thing that screamed money without trying. I found heels that made me 3 inches taller. I found sunglasses that cost more than Dale's monthly salary. Marcus watched me getting ready that Monday morning, and he asked, "Mom, why are you so dressed up?" I smiled at him in the mirror. Because, baby, sometimes you have to remind people exactly who they're dealing with. I kissed his forehead and told him to have a good day at his new school. Then I got in the back of the town car Patterson had arranged, because I was done driving myself, and I headed back to hell. The driver pulled up to the Clean Corp warehouse at 4:55 a.m., and I could already see the panic through the windows. Dale was running around like a chicken with his head cut off, screaming at people to clean faster, organize better, look professional. He had no idea what the new owner looked like, no idea who was coming. He just knew his job was on the line. I watched him through the tinted windows for a moment, and I felt this cold, steady satisfaction settle in my chest. This was going to be good. The driver opened my door at exactly 5 a.m. I stepped out in my Chanel suit and heels, and I walked toward the entrance like I owned the place, because I did. Dale was at the door, his hair slicked back, his shirt buttoned all the way up for once, that fake smile plastered on his face. He was looking past me, looking for the CEO. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, barely glancing at me. "Are you with the new owner's team?" I stopped right in front of him, took off my sunglasses, watched his face go from confused to shocked to utterly terrified in the span of 3 seconds. "No, Dale," I said, my voice ice cold and steady. "I am the owner." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. Behind him, I could see the other workers starting to notice, starting to whisper. Maria, who'd worked the night shift with me for 3 years. James, who Dale had written up for taking a bathroom break. Keisha, who'd cried in the break room after Dale screamed at her for asking about her paycheck. They were all staring. And I let the silence stretch out, let Dale squirm, let the reality of what was happening sink into every corner of that warehouse. Then I smiled, not a friendly smile, a wolf's smile. "Shall we begin the audit?" Dale tried to laugh it off. He actually tried to laugh. "Maya, listen, if this is about the other day, I held up one hand and he stopped talking. Just like that. Because power is a funny thing. When you have it, you don't need to raise your voice. Patterson stepped out of the town car behind me, briefcase in hand, looking every bit the corporate attorney he was. "Mr. Dale," Patterson said calmly, "Miss Johnson is the majority owner of Clean Corp as of last Friday. You report to her now. I suggest you start acting accordingly." I watched the color drain from Dale's face, watched his hands start to shake. This man who'd made my life hell for 3 years, who'd humiliated me in front of my coworkers, who'd stolen my pay and my dignity, he looked like he might actually pass out. Good. I walked past him into the warehouse, my heels clicking on the concrete floor. and every single person stopped what they were doing. Maria dropped her mop. James just stared. Keisha's hand went to her mouth. "Morning, everyone," I said, loud enough for all of them to hear. "For those who don't know me, though most of you do, I'm Maya Johnson. I worked here for 3 years. I scrubbed the same toilets you scrub. I dealt with the same impossible quotas. And as of last week, I bought this company." The silence was deafening. Then Keisha started clapping. Just her at first, slow and steady, tears running down her face. Then Maria joined in. Then James. Then everyone. The whole warehouse erupted in applause, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. Dale was standing behind me, frozen, watching his entire workforce celebrate his downfall. "Now," I said, pulling out my phone and opening the Notes app where I'd written down everything I wanted to say. "We're going to make some changes around here. But first, I think it's only fair that Mr. Dale gets a taste of what he's been serving for years." I turned to face him. He looked sick. "Dale, the executive bathroom upstairs, the one only you have the key to. I'm told it hasn't been cleaned in weeks. I need you to grab a mop, a bucket, and some bleach, and I need you to scrub that bathroom until it sparkles." His face went red. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious, and you have 5 minutes, starting now." I held up my phone, timer ready, because that's what you gave me when my son was having an asthma attack, remember. 5 minutes, tick-tock, Dale. He looked around, desperate, like someone might save him. No one moved. Patterson just stared at him with those cold attorney eyes. The warehouse workers watched in stunned silence. Dale's hands were shaking as he grabbed a mop from the supply closet. I followed him upstairs to the executive bathroom, this pristine, marble-tiled thing that we'd never been allowed to even look at. And I stood in the doorway with my arms crossed while he got on his knees and started scrubbing. "You're going too slow," I said, echoing his words back to him. "Do you think you're special, Dale? Do you think the rules don't apply to you?" He didn't answer, just scrubbed harder, his face bright red, sweat dripping down his forehead. When the timer went off, I checked his work. Missed a spot by the sink. Looks like you're not as thorough as you thought." I could see the rage in his eyes, the humiliation, the absolute impotent fury of a bully who'd finally met someone he couldn't push around. And God help me, it felt incredible. We went back downstairs, and I had Patterson set up a projector. "Everyone, gather around," I called out. "I think you all deserve to know exactly who you've been working for." Dale's eyes went wide. "Maya, wait." But it was too late. Patterson pulled up the files on the screen. Bank records showing Dale's embezzlement, timesheets he'd altered, emails where he bragged about cutting corners on safety equipment to pocket the savings. Every dirty secret laid bare for everyone to see. The room went silent again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was rage. These people had families, kids, bills, and Dale had been stealing from them for years. Maria stepped forward, her voice shaking. "You told me we didn't have money for new gloves. You said the budget was tight, but you were buying yourself a new truck." Dale's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I stepped between him and the crowd, because honestly, I thought they might actually rush him. "Mr. Dale," I said quietly, "you're fired. Effective immediately. No severance, no references, and my legal team will be filing charges for theft and fraud by the end of the week." He looked at me with pure hatred. "You can't do this," he hissed. I smiled. "Actually, I can. I'm the owner, remember?" Security, 2 guys Patterson had hired for exactly this purpose, escorted Dale out. He was screaming the whole way, threatening lawsuits, threatening to ruin me. But his voice got quieter and quieter until the door slammed shut and he was just gone. The warehouse erupted in cheers. People were hugging, crying, laughing. And me? I just stood there, watching, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Free. Dale tried to laugh it off. He actually laughed. This nervous, high-pitched sound that echoed through the warehouse. Maya, come on. This is a joke, right? Some kind of prank. Patterson stepped forward, briefcase in hand, and pulled out a document. Mr. Dale, this is the bill of sale. Ms. Johnson is the legal owner of Clean Corp as of last Friday. You report to her now. I suggest you start treating her accordingly. The laughter died in Dale's throat. I watched the color drain from his face, watched his hands start to tremble, watched the exact moment he realized this wasn't a prank. This was real, and he was screwed. I walked past him into the warehouse, my heels clicking on that concrete floor I'd scrubbed 1,000 times. Every single person stopped what they were doing. Maria dropped her spray bottle. James froze mid-mop. Keisha had her hand over her mouth, tears already starting. "Morning, everyone," I said, loud enough for them all to hear. For those who don't know me, though most of you do, I'm Maya Johnson. I worked here for 3 years, and as of last week, I own this company. The silence was so complete you could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Then Keisha started clapping, slow at first, then faster. Maria joined in, then James, then everyone, the whole warehouse erupting in applause and cheers. Dale stood there, his face going from white to red, watching his entire workforce celebrate his downfall. I let them have their moment. God knows they'd earned it. "And now," I said, holding up my hand for quiet, "before we talk about changes, I think we need to address something important." I turned to face Dale directly. "Mr. Dale, you've spent years telling people in this warehouse that they're not good enough, that they're slow, that they're lazy, that they need to work harder, faster, better." His jaw clenched. "So I think it's only fair that you get a chance to prove you're not a hypocrite." I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "The executive bathroom upstairs, the one only you have the key to, needs cleaning. I want you to grab a mop, a bucket, and some bleach, and I want that bathroom spotless in 5 minutes." The warehouse went dead silent again. Dale's face was now a deep, angry red. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious. 5 minutes, Dale. That's what you gave me when my son was having an asthma attack. Remember? When you docked my whole day's pay?" I pulled out my phone and opened the timer. "Clock starts now." For a moment, I thought he might refuse. I could see the rage in his eyes, the humiliation, the absolute disbelief that this was happening to him. But he also saw Patterson standing there with that lawyer look that said, "Give me a reason," and he saw everyone watching, and he knew he had no choice. He grabbed a mop from the supply closet with shaking hands and headed upstairs. I followed him, because, I wasn't missing this. The executive bathroom was everything we'd imagined. Marble counters, fancy soap dispensers, one of those Japanese toilets that probably cost more than my monthly salary used to be. Dale got on his knees and started scrubbing, his movements jerky and angry. "You're going too slow," I said calmly, standing in the doorway with my arms crossed. "Do you think you're special, Dale? Do you think the rules don't apply to you?" I was using his exact words, his exact tone, and I could see it hitting him like physical blows. He scrubbed harder, sweat dripping down his forehead, his expensive shirt getting soaked. When the timer went off, I walked over and inspected his work. You missed a spot by the sink, and the mirror has streaks." I looked at him, still on his knees, and I felt something I never thought I'd feel toward another human being. Cold, complete satisfaction. But I suppose it'll do. For now. We went back downstairs, and Dale looked like he'd been through a war. His shirt was drenched, his face was red and blotchy, and his hands were shaking. Every single person in that warehouse was staring at him, And for the first time in years, he wasn't the one with the power. I was, and he knew it. Everyone knew it. And honestly, it felt incredible. I wasn't done. Not even close. Patterson had set up a projector while Dale was upstairs scrubbing toilets. God, I loved that man's efficiency. And now there was a white screen pulled down against the warehouse wall. "Everyone, gather around," I called out. "I think you all deserve to know exactly who you've been working for." Dale's eyes went wide. He looked at Patterson, at the projector, at me, and I watched the panic set in. "Maya, wait. Whatever you think you have." "Oh, I don't think, Dale. I know." Patterson clicked a button, and the first image appeared on the screen. Bank statements. Dale's personal account, highlighted in yellow, showing deposits that were way too large for a warehouse manager's salary. "For the past 4 years," I said, walking closer to the screen so everyone could see, "Dale's been skimming overtime pay. He'd mark you down as leaving early, or clock you out for lunch breaks you never took, and pocket the difference." The room erupted in angry murmurs. Maria's voice cut through. "I worked 60 hours last month and only got paid for 40. You told me there was a payroll error." Dale's face had gone from red to gray. "Oh, that was a mistake. I was going to fix." "Next slide," I said. Patterson clicked again. This time it was purchase orders, invoices, receipts. Dale's also been buying cheap cleaning supplies and charging the company for premium ones. Watered-down chemicals that barely work. Generic garbage that ate through your gloves and burned your hands. All while he ordered top-shelf products on paper and kept the cash difference. Keisha stood up, her voice shaking. "My hands are scarred because of those chemicals. I went to the ER twice for chemical burns and you told me I wasn't using them right." "Because if I admitted the products were substandard," Dale said, his voice desperate now, "the company would have investigated and—" He stopped, realizing he'd just confessed. Patterson pulled up the final slide. Emails. Dale's emails to suppliers, to his bookie. Yeah, he had a gambling problem we'd discovered. To his mistress, also a surprise. All of them bragging about how he was bleeding the company dry, and these idiots don't even notice. The warehouse was silent now, but it was the kind of silence that comes right before an explosion. I could feel the rage building, the betrayal, the years of abuse suddenly making perfect sense. These people had struggled, suffered, sacrificed, and Dale had been robbing them the whole time. "How much?" James asked, his voice low and dangerous. "How much did you steal from us?" Patterson pulled up a final spreadsheet. Conservative estimate, over 4 years, $340,000 in overtime theft, supply fraud, and kickbacks. The number hung in the air like a bomb. $340,000. That was college tuition. That was medical bills. That was the difference between surviving and actually living for most of the people in this room. Dale tried to run. He actually tried to bolt for the door, but 2 security guards Patterson had hired were already blocking it. "Mr. Dale," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, "you're fired. Effective immediately. No severance package. No letter of recommendation. No second chances." I walked up to him, close enough to see the sweat beading on his upper lip, close enough to smell his fear. "And my legal team will be filing criminal charges for embezzlement, fraud, and theft. You're going to pay back every cent you stole, and then you're going to prison." His voice came out as a raspy whisper. "You can't do this to me." "I already did." The security guards escorted him out. He was yelling, threatening lawsuits, threatening to expose me for things he was clearly making up on the spot. But his voice got quieter and quieter until the door slammed shut and he was just gone. The warehouse stayed silent for about 3 seconds. Then it exploded. People were hugging, crying, shouting. Some were laughing hysterically. Maria collapsed into a chair, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I let them have their moment, let them process what had just happened. Then I climbed up on an equipment crate so everyone could see me. "Listen up," I said, and the room gradually quieted. "I didn't buy this company to run it the way Dale did. I bought it because I know what it's like to be you. I've been you. So here's what's changing, starting right now." I pulled out my phone and read from the notes I'd prepared. "Everyone's getting a 25% raise, effective immediately. We're implementing full health benefits, medical, dental, vision, paid sick leave, paid parental leave, and profit sharing. When this company does well, you do well, because you're the ones actually doing the work." The room erupted again, but this time it was pure joy. Keisha was on her knees, hands over her face. James had his head in his hands. Maria was just staring at me like I'd grown wings. "We're also hiring more staff," I continued, "which means your workload is about to be cut significantly. No more impossible quotas. No more working through injuries. No more choosing between your job and your family. You're human beings, not machines, and I'm going to treat you like it." Patterson stepped forward with contracts, actual printed employment agreements that he'd had prepared because the man was a damn wizard. "Everyone's getting new contracts with these terms in writing," he said. "Review them, ask questions, sign them when you're ready. This is all legally binding. Mrs. Johnson means every word." I watched them line up to get their packets, watched the disbelief slowly transform into hope, into something that looked a lot like happiness. And standing there, in that warehouse that had been my personal hell for 3 years, I finally understood what power was really for, not to crush people, but to lift them up. I drove back to the mansion that evening in a daze. The town car felt surreal after everything that had just happened. Leather seats, climate control, a driver who called me ma'am. 6 months ago, I'd been scrubbing toilets for minimum wage. Now I was... what? A CEO? An heiress? It still didn't feel real. Marcus was waiting on the front steps when I pulled up, and the second I got out of the car, he ran to me. "Mom! How'd it go?" I hugged him tight, breathing in the smell of his hair, feeling the solidness of him. "It went exactly how it needed to go, baby." We walked inside together, and I looked around at this impossible palace that was somehow mine. The chandelier in the entrance hall, the grand staircase, the oil paintings of people I didn't know. And I thought, what am I supposed to do with all this? The answer came to me that night while Marcus and I were eating dinner in the massive dining room. Pizza from a box because neither of us knew how to use the fancy kitchen yet. And honestly, who cared? "Mom," Marcus said, tomato sauce on his chin, "can I ask you something?" "Always." "What would Kenny Rogers want us to do with this place?" I put down my slice and really looked at him. My 12-year-old son, who'd spent his whole life in apartments with leaky ceilings and coin-operated laundry, was asking about legacy, about purpose. And I realized he was asking the exact right question. "I think," I said slowly, "he'd want us to share it, to use it to help people the way Grandma Lorraine helped him." Marcus nodded, thinking, like, what if we turned part of it into a music school? For kids who can't afford lessons. I stared at my son, this beautiful, thoughtful kid who'd inherited his great-grandmother's heart, and I felt tears burning in my eyes. Baby, that's perfect. The next morning, I called Patterson and a team of architects. Within 2 weeks, we had plans drawn up to convert the entire east wing of the mansion into the Lionheart Center for Arts and Education. Music studios, practice rooms, a performance hall, all of it free for kids from underserved communities. We'd teach guitar, piano, voice, production, everything Kenny had mastered and loved. It would cost a fortune to build and maintain, but I had a fortune now. And what good was money if you just hoarded it like a dragon? The construction took 3 months. I watched the transformation every day, walls coming down, soundproofing going up, instruments being delivered in trucks. Marcus helped me pick out guitars, test out keyboards, set up the recording equipment. He was glowing, happier than I'd ever seen him. His new school was good, but this gave him purpose. One afternoon, while the contractors were installing the lighting in the performance hall, Marcus came running to find me. Mom, you have to see this." He dragged me to the library, to that hidden room behind the bookshelf where we'd first found the gold and the stocks. I was looking through the other boxes in the safe, and I found this. He handed me an envelope, yellowed with age, with my name written on it in Grandma Lorraine's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, and the words made my throat tight. "Maya, my beautiful girl. If you're reading this, it means you found everything. I know this must be overwhelming. I know you probably think you don't deserve it, but you do. You've always been strong, always been kind, even when the world tried to break you. The money is a tool, not a master. Use it to lift people up, not to become someone you're not. And remember, it's okay to step on the ones who deserve it. Kenny taught me that. Some people only learn when they fall. I love you. I'm so proud of you. And I'm watching over you, always, Grandma Lorraine." I sat down on the floor of that hidden room and cried. Not sad crying, grateful crying. Because she'd known. Somehow, she'd known exactly what I'd need to hear. Marcus sat down next to me, and we just stayed there for a while, surrounded by the fortune she'd left us, feeling her presence like she was right there with us. That night, Marcus and I set the table in the formal dining room, the long, ridiculous table that could seat 20 people. We put out the fancy china, lit the candles, made it look like we were about to host a state dinner. And then we ordered pizza, pepperoni and mushroom, from the same place we used to go when we lived in the apartment. We sat at opposite ends of the table, and we had to shout to hear each other, and it was absolutely ridiculous. And perfect. "Mom," Marcus called from his end of the table, "do you think we'll ever get used to this?" I looked around at the crystal chandelier above us, at the gold-framed mirrors on the walls, at the pizza box sitting on a table that probably cost more than a car. "I hope not," I said. "I hope we never forget where we came from." He grinned. "Me too." We finished our pizza, and then Marcus helped me clean up, because mansion or not, you still wash your own dishes. That's just how we were raised. As I was putting away the plates, I looked out the window at the grounds, at the lights of the art center glowing in the east wing. Kids would be there soon. Kids like us, who'd been told they couldn't have beautiful things. And they'd learn and grow. And maybe one day, they'd lift someone else up too. That was the legacy. Not the money, not the mansion, the lifting. And I was just getting started. 3 weeks before the grand opening of the Lionheart Center, a black Mercedes pulled up the driveway unannounced. I was in the performance hall with Marcus, testing out the acoustics, when one of the staff members came to find me. "Ms. Johnson, there's a man at the door. Says he's family. Says his name is Michael Rogers." My blood went cold. Kenny's son. The one who'd been cut out of the will. I'd known this was coming eventually, Patterson had warned me, but I'd hoped we'd have more time. "Tell him I'll be right there," I said, keeping my voice steady. Marcus looked at me, worried. "Who's Michael Rogers?" "Someone who wants what we have, baby, but he's not going to get it." I straightened my shoulders, smoothed down my shirt, and walked to the front door like I owned the place. Because I did. Michael Rogers was exactly what I expected. Mid-50s, expensive suit. That particular brand of entitlement that comes from being born into money and then losing it. He had his father's eyes, but none of his warmth. 2 lawyers stood behind him, briefcases in hand, looking like vultures circling a carcass. "Ms. Johnson," he said, not offering his hand. "I'm Michael Rogers, Kenny Rogers' son. And I'm here to inform you that I'm contesting my father's will." I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe. "On what grounds?" "Undue influence. My father was on heavy medication in his final years. That woman, your grandmother, she manipulated him, isolated him from his family, convinced him to sign away his legacy to a complete stranger. His voice was bitter, angry. This house, this estate, it should have gone to his children. To his blood. I felt rage building in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. Your father made his choice, Mr. Rogers, and he made it very clearly. We'll see what a judge says about that, Michael sneered. I have 3 lawyers and a forensic accountant ready to tear apart every document, every transaction. By the time I'm done, you'll be lucky to walk away with the pocket change. Patterson appeared behind me like a guardian angel in a suit. Mr. Rogers, I'm David Patterson, Ms. Johnson's attorney. I'd be very careful about making threats on my client's property. Michael's lawyers shifted uncomfortably. This isn't a threat, it's a promise. My father built this empire, and some housekeeper and her granddaughter aren't going to steal it. That's when I stopped being calm. Your father didn't build an empire, I said, my voice low and dangerous. He built a legacy, and the only one trying to steal it is you. I turned to Patterson. Show him. Patterson smiled, a cold, professional smile that made Michael's lawyers take a step back. Mr. Rogers, before you waste everyone's time with a lawsuit you're going to lose, there's something you should see. We led them to the library, to the massive screen Patterson had installed for exactly this purpose. Michael was looking around the mansion with naked greed, probably calculating what everything was worth. His lawyers were taking notes. And me? I was about to destroy all of them. Patterson pulled up a video file. The screen flickered to life, and there was Kenny Rogers. Not frail, not dying, but sitting in a chair in this very library, clear-eyed and focused. The timestamp showed it was recorded 2 years before his death. If you're watching this, Kenny's voice filled the room, warm and steady, it means I'm gone. And it probably means one of my kids is trying to contest my will. Michael's face went pale. Michael, if that's you, and I'm betting it is, let me be real clear. I am of sound mind. I am not being manipulated. And I'm leaving everything to Lorraine Hayes because she's the only person in the last 10 years who gave a damn about me and not my money. The camera panned to show Patterson sitting next to Kenny, along with a doctor I didn't recognize. This is Dr. Elizabeth Chen, Kenny continued. She's here to certify that I'm mentally competent, fully aware of what I'm doing, and not under any duress. Lorraine isn't even in the building right now. She's at the grocery store because that's who she is. She takes care of people. Kenny's expression hardened. Michael, you want to know why I cut you out? Because you hired a probate attorney before I was even diagnosed. Because you showed up at my house asking about my will when I could still walk. Because you treated my final years like a countdown to your payday. The room was dead silent except for Kenny's voice. Lorraine earned every penny I'm leaving her. She cooked when I couldn't eat. She read to me when I couldn't see. She sat with me through the pain and the fear and never once asked for anything. That's love. That's loyalty. And that's something you never showed me. Kenny looked directly into the camera, and it felt like he was looking at us, at this exact moment. To Lorraine's family, whoever you are, use this wisely. Don't let it make you cruel. Don't let it make you small. And if anyone tries to take it from you. He smiled, that famous Kenny Rogers smile. You show them this video and you tell them to get the hell off your property. The video ended. Michael was shaking, his face red, his hands clenched into fists. His lawyers were already packing up their briefcases. They knew a lost cause when they saw one. That video is admissible in court, Patterson said calmly, as are the testimonies of 16 other witnesses, the medical records, and the documentation of every time you or your siblings tried to coerce Kenny into changing his will. So please, Mr. Rogers, file your lawsuit. I'd love the opportunity to destroy you publicly. Michael looked at me with pure hatred. You think you've won? I know I have, I said. Your father chose who he wanted to carry his legacy, and it wasn't you. Now get out of my house. Security escorted them out. I'd learned to keep security on standby after the first time Michael had called threatening legal action. I watched through the window as their Mercedes disappeared down the driveway, and I felt something settle deep in my chest. This was really mine. No one could take it. No one could challenge it. Kenny had made sure of that. Marcus came and stood beside me. Was that scary? He asked. I put my arm around him. Just a little. But we had the truth on our side, and the truth always wins. He looked up at me with those big, serious eyes. Do you think Kenny's watching us? Like Grandma Lorraine? I thought about the video, about the way Kenny had looked into that camera like he could see the future, like he knew exactly what we'd need. Yeah, baby, I said. I think he is. And I think he's proud. The grand opening of the Lionheart Center happened on a Saturday in April, exactly 1 year after I'd inherited everything. The lawn was filled with families, local news crews, some of Kenny's old musician friends who came to perform. 60 kids had signed up for the first semester, guitar, piano, voice, production, all completely free. I stood on the front steps of the mansion, looking out at all those faces, and I felt Grandma Lorraine's presence so strongly it almost knocked me over. This was what she'd wanted. This was the legacy. I didn't give a speech about myself or my story. I talked about Kenny and Lorraine, about loyalty and love, about how music could save a kid's life the way it had saved theirs. And when we cut the ribbon and those kids flooded into the center, their eyes wide as they touched real instruments for the first time, I knew we'd done something that mattered. 6 months later, I was standing on the balcony of the mansion, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. The arts center was thriving. Clean Corp was profitable and expanding. Marcus was happy, confident, becoming the young man I'd always known he could be. And me, I was different too. Not just because of the money, though yeah, financial security changes everything, but because I'd learned what real power was. It wasn't about crushing people. It wasn't about revenge, though I won't lie. Watching Dale scrub that bathroom was pretty satisfying. Real power was about lifting people up, about using what you had to change lives, about proving that people like us, people who'd been told we were nothing, could be everything. I thought about Mr. Dale sometimes, about how he'd called me worthless, how he'd docked my pay for being 5 minutes late while my son couldn't breathe. And now I signed the paychecks. Now I made the rules. Now I decided who deserved dignity and who didn't. They used to say I wasn't worth minimum wage, that I was lazy, slow, ungrateful, that I should be happy just to have a job. And now I owned the company. I owned the mansion. I owned a legacy that would outlive all of us. Life, I'd learned, has an expensive sense of humor. And the punchline, I was just getting started. The Lionheart Center was phase 1. I had plans for scholarships, for housing programs, for investing in communities that looked like the one I came from. Because Grandma Lorraine had given me more than money. She'd given me a mission, and I was going to spend the rest of my life making sure that no kid, no single parent, no person working 3 jobs just to survive ever felt as small as I used to feel. They'd know they mattered. They'd know they were seen, just like Lorraine had been seen by Kenny, just like I'd been seen by her. I took one last look at the sunset and smiled. Somewhere, I knew Grandma Lorraine and Kenny Rogers were watching, probably playing cards and laughing at how perfectly this had all turned out. Thank you, I whispered to the sky, for seeing me, for believing in me, for giving me the chance to do the same for others. The wind picked up, warm and gentle, and I swear it felt like an answer, like she was saying, "You're welcome, baby girl. Now go show them what you're made of." And I would. Every single day for the rest of my life, I would... Here's the thing about inheriting a fortune from a music legend. It changes everything. But you know what changes even more? When you use it to rewrite your entire life. Maya went from scrubbing floors to signing checks. From being humiliated for being 5 minutes late to firing the man who humiliated her. But the next story? It's about a nurse who lost everything on Christmas Eve for showing compassion. And then discovered the homeless man she helped owned half of Montana. What he did to the hospital director who fired her. That's the kind of justice that'll give you chills. You don't want to miss it.